My girlfriend slept with a stranger while I was picking up her sick mother, so I left her on read, packed quietly, and vanished into a new life. I'm a 25-year-old guy. And if there's one word people always use to describe me, it's reliable. I grew up in a home where I couldn't rely on anyone. My dad bailed when I was 10. And my mom worked 2 jobs just to keep food on the table. I learned early that if I wanted stability, I had to become it myself. Maybe that's why I've always gone out of my way to be dependable for the people I love, even when it costs me more than they realize. When I met Emily, I thought I'd finally found someone who saw that in me. She used to smile and tell her friends, "He's the kind of guy you can call at 3 a.m. and he'll show up without asking why." And she wasn't wrong. I fixed her car in the middle of winter, skipped nights out with my friends to babysit her little cousin, and even loaned her brother money when he was in a bind. I didn't think twice about it. That's just who I was, someone who showed up. Still, sometimes I'd catch myself wondering if I was doing it because it was truly appreciated, or because deep down I was terrified of being abandoned again. That fear, that need to be needed, shaped everything I did. And with Emily, I told myself it was different. This was real love. She had this way of making me feel like I mattered, like I was funnily enough. But being the dependable one comes with a price. You get taken for granted without even noticing it's happening. And I didn't realize just how much of myself I was giving away until the night her mother's sudden health scare changed everything. That's when my loyalty was put to the ultimate test. I remember the night it all shifted. Emily's voice cracked over the phone, panic lacing every word. "Babe, it's Mom. She's really sick. She's stuck at Aunt Linda's 3 hours away. Please, you have to go get her." I didn't hesitate. That's who I was. I had a deadline at work the next morning, a stack of unfinished projects, and I hadn't slept properly in 2 days. But none of that mattered. Emily framed it like I was her mother's only hope. And when she said, "If you loved me, you'd do this," my chest tightened. I couldn't be the guy who said no, so I grabbed my keys, filled up my tank with money I really didn't have to spare, and hit the road. 3 hours of highway lights blurring into each other, my hands aching on the steering wheel, my brain fighting sleep. The radio was low, some static-filled station whispering songs I barely heard. All I could think was, at least Emily will be grateful. At least she'll know I've got her back. Her mom wasn't easy to handle either. She coughed the whole ride, complained about the cold air, and muttered things like, "Emily's lucky you put up with all this." I just smiled, swallowing my exhaustion. Every mile closer to home, I told myself this sacrifice would mean something. That Emily would look at me like I was her hero when I walked through the door. By the time I carried her mom's bags into our apartment, my body felt like it had been wrung dry. I expected warmth, appreciation, maybe even relief. But when I walked back into our apartment that night, everything felt wrong. When I walked in, the first thing I noticed was the wine glass. It was sitting on the coffee table, half full, catching the glow of the lamp. The problem was, don't drink wine. Not like that. Emily did sometimes, but this wasn't her usual glass. It was bigger, heavier, like the kind my dad used to pour bourbon into before he disappeared. Then there was the smell. Faint, but distinct. A musky cologne that didn't belong to me. It clung to the air, mixed with the detergent from our freshly washed sheets. My stomach knotted as I brushed my hand over the bedspread. Felt rumpled. Warm in places it shouldn't have been if no one else had been there. "Hey," Emily said casually, stepping out of the bathroom, towel wrapped around her hair. "How's Mom? Did she complain the whole way?" She laughed lightly, too lightly, like she was filling the silence before I could ask anything. "She's fine," I muttered, still standing in the doorway. "You been drinking?" "Oh yeah, just one glass to relax. Stressful day, you know?" She shrugged. not meeting my eyes as she scooped the glass up and whisked it into the kitchen. Her movements were sharp, too quick, like she was erasing evidence. I told myself I was exhausted. I'd been driving for hours, running on fumes. Maybe I was imagining things. Maybe I just wanted something to be wrong because deep down, I was scared of how fragile everything felt. I pushed it aside, convincing myself I was overthinking that night. After Emily fell asleep beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my chest tight with unease. Just as I was drifting off, my phone buzzed. A message lit up the screen from a mutual friend. "Bro, I need to tell you something about Emily." My hands shook as I opened the message, my eyes scanning over the words like they were written in fire. "I don't know how to tell you this, man, but I saw Emily at the bar today. She wasn't alone. She was flirting, drinking, then left with some guy I've never seen before." For a second, my heart stopped. My brain refused to believe it. Emily. While I was out there driving for hours, draining my bank account, carrying her sick mother back home, she was drinking and laughing with a stranger. My chest felt like it had been caved in with a sledgehammer. I sat there in the dark. Emily, breathing softly beside me, while my mind played a cruel movie reel. Every sacrifice I'd made flashed before me. Skipping work events because she needed me, covering her bills when she was short, defending her two friends who told me she wasn't good for me. And today was the worst of all. I had been killing myself to prove I was dependable, while she was proving just how disposable. I was to her, the words from the message seared themselves into my brain. She left with him. I could see it, even though I wasn't there. Her laugh, the way she tilted her head, the same look she once gave me when we first met. My gut twisted, bile rising in my throat. I turned my head and looked at her sleeping. So peaceful, like she hadn't just set fire to everything we had. For the first time, I didn't see my girlfriend. I saw a liar, a betrayer, someone I could never unsee for what she was. But I didn't shake her awake. I didn't scream or demand answers. My rage was too deep, too sharp. I didn't confront her right away. I just went silent. I woke up the next morning and decided not to play the part she expected. No shouting, no accusations, no dramatic scene. Just silence. It was almost unnatural for me. I'd always been the one to talk things out, to fix things before they cracked. But this time, I wanted her to feel the weight of it. Emily noticed right away. "You okay?" she asked over coffee, her voice soft but edged with unease. I shrugged, barely looking up from my phone. "Yeah, just tired." Short answers. No warmth, no questions about her day. It was like pulling oxygen out of the room and watching her try to breathe. She started texting me when I was at work long. Rambling messages about nothing. Memes, updates. Little apologies for things I hadn't brought up. I'd reply hours later with a single word, "Cool. Okay. Sure." Each time. I could feel her nervousness creeping through the screen at night. She'd slide closer in bed, testing if I'd pull away. I didn't. I just lay there, staring at the ceiling. My mind running through every detail. How to transfer the last of my money into a new account, which documents to grab first. What day she'd be at work longest so I could pack. My silence became a mirror she couldn't stand to look into. She didn't know how much I knew. That was the point. Every vague answer, every long pause, it all built a pressure she couldn't name, but definitely felt. I wasn't planning a confrontation anymore. I was planning an exit. A clean one, a quiet one. That's when I decided she'll never see me break. It happened on a Wednesday night. Emily was in the shower, steam hissing behind the closed bathroom door, when her phone buzzed on the nightstand. Normally, I never snooped. I thought loyalty meant trust. But my chest was already heavy with suspicion, and this time, my body moved before my brain could argue. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize. The preview alone stopped my breath. Last night was incredible. Can't stop thinking about your lips. My hands went numb. I unlocked her phone, half hoping it was some sick misunderstanding, but the thread of messages destroyed me. Dozens of texts, some flirty, some explicit, each one like a knife twisting deeper. They weren't shy about it either, inside jokes, half-drunk confessions, even plans to meet again. This wasn't a single slip-up. This wasn't regret. It was routine. I didn't rage. I didn't cry. My hands were steady as I scrolled, screenshotting every word, every timestamp. I sent them to my email, making sure I had proof she could never erase. With every click, my heartbreak hardened into something else, something cold. It wasn't just betrayal. It was recklessness. She had invited someone into the life we built, risked everything I gave, and didn't even bother hiding it well. That cut deeper than anything because it showed she never feared losing me. She thought I'd stay no matter what. From the bathroom, I heard her humming softly, water splashing like nothing was wrong. That sound made my skin crawl. My whole world had collapsed, and she was in there singing. Oblivious, I put her phone back exactly as I'd found it, slid into bed, and stared at the ceiling while my jaw clenched tight. Then I whispered to myself, it's almost like a promise. She doesn't deserve a goodbye. I don't even remember grabbing my keys that night. One minute I was lying in bed beside her, my chest tight with secrets, and the next I was in my car parked 2 blocks away, the engine off. The darkness pressing in on me. That's where it hit me. Everything I'd buried under silence and planning came crashing down. My hands gripped the steering wheel so hard my knuckles went white. And then the tears came, violent, ugly sobs that shook my whole body. I pressed my forehead against the wheel, gasping for air like I was drowning. I felt stupid. Stupid for believing her when she said I was the one. Stupid for thinking loyalty would be enough to keep someone from straying. Stupid for pouring every ounce of myself into someone who saw me as disposable. My mind replayed every moment. I defended her, telling my friends she just had bad days, assuring my family she was different, convincing myself that love meant sacrifice. But sacrifice had turned me into a ghost. I was the guy who drove 3 hours in the middle of the night for her mother, while she laughed in another man's arms. The guy who skipped opportunities, friendships, pieces of his own life just to be reliable. And what did I get? Betrayal. The car was silent except for my ragged breaths. My reflection in the rearview mirror looked hollow, a man stripped of dignity. For a second, I wondered if I'd ever be enough for anyone, or if I was destined to always be the one who gave and got nothing back. And then, in the thick of that despair, something inside me shifted. The tears slowed, my grip loosened, and a strange calm settled over me. But that night, rock bottom turned into resolve. The next morning, I woke up with swollen eyes and a plan. Not a perfect one, not a loud one, but a quiet, deliberate plan. If Emily could betray me in silence, then I would leave her in silence. No warnings. No messy fights. Just absence. I started small. One bag at a time, when she was at work or out with friends. A hoodie here, a pair of shoes there. I tucked them into my car trunk, hidden under a blanket. Each trip felt surreal, like I was living 2 lives at once. The boyfriend who smiled and asked about her day, and the ghost already slipping out of her world. I canceled our joint streaming accounts, one by one. Changed the passwords on my email and bank, making sure there were no ties she could pull when I was gone. A coworker I trusted had a spare room in his apartment, and when I asked about moving in, he didn't even question it. Just nodded and said, "Whenever you're ready, man." The strangest part was how normal Emily acted. She laughed at dinner, curled up next to me on the couch, kissed me like nothing was wrong. Sometimes I almost believed it was real again. But then I'd catch the ghost of that cologne, or remember the messages burned into my phone. And the mask slipped back into place. My revenge wasn't going to be a screaming match or a dramatic reveal. It was going to be her waking up one morning to emptiness, to silence, to the realization that I was gone and she'd never get the satisfaction of hearing me break. Every zipper I closed was another nail in the coffin of our relationship. That last night felt like a scene from a movie I didn't belong in. Emily curled against me, her arm draped across my chest, her voice soft in the dark. "I love you," she whispered, her breath warm against my skin. I lay there stiff, my heart no longer moved by the words that once anchored me. It was chilling her lies wrapped around me like a blanket, while my soul was already gone. I didn't respond. I couldn't. Instead, I stared at the ceiling, tracing cracks in the plaster with my eyes, counting the seconds between her breaths. My mind wasn't in that bed anymore, was rehearsing my exit. I pictured the quiet click of the door closing behind me, the empty closet she'd find in the morning, the silence that would crush her when she realized I had slipped away without a word. Every touch from her felt like a reminder of betrayal. Her fingers absent-mindedly traced my arm, the same arm that had carried her mother's bags, the same arm she leaned on when life got hard. And yet, all I could feel was the weight of every stranger's hands she had chosen over mine. I blinked into the darkness, barely breathing, practicing the goodbye I'd never say out loud. Thank you for teaching me what love should never feel like. Thank you for showing me the cost of blind loyalty. My chest tightened, but not from love, from finality. She shifted closer, sighing contently, completely unaware that this was the last night she'd ever hold me. For her, it was just another evening. For me, it was the final act when she woke up. My side of the bed was empty. The sky was still black when I slipped out of bed. Emily murmured something in her sleep and rolled over, clutching a pillow in my place. I stood there for a second, just watching her, the woman I had given everything to, the woman who had burned it all down. Then I turned away. My bags were already in the car, waiting like loyal soldiers ready for escape. The air outside was cold and sharp, biting at my skin as I loaded the last small box into the trunk. My hands moved with a calm I didn't feel. Inside, my chest was trembling, but on the surface, I was steady, methodical. I slid into the driver's seat, started the engine, and drove away without glancing back at the apartment window. By the time the sun was rising, her calls started flooding in. My phone lit up with her name over and over. "Where are you? Why aren't you answering? Please, call me back." Each one went unanswered. I blocked her number, deleted her from every social account, erased every digital string that tied me to her. My silence roared louder than any shouting match could have. There was a grief in it like burying someone who was still alive. But tangled with that grief was a strange, intoxicating freedom. The further I drove, the lighter I felt, as if every mile put more distance between me and the version of myself that used to beg to be loved. I knew she'd panic. I knew she'd scramble for answers. But that was the point. I wasn't going to give her closure. She would never get to see me shattered. And just like that, I was gone from her life. The apartment I moved into was nothing special, one bedroom. Peeling paint near the windows, a stove that clicked twice before it lit, but it was mine. For the first time in years, I could shut the door behind me and feel actual peace. No second guessing, no waiting for betrayal to walk through the door. Just quiet. That first night, I slept like a man who had been underwater too long and finally reached the surface. I started piecing myself back together. The gym became my sanctuary. Every drop of sweat felt like poison leaving my body. I picked up hobbies I had abandoned: sketching, late-night walks, even learning to cook something more than microwave meals. Friends I hadn't spoken to in months started coming around again. They didn't say it outright, but I could see it in their eyes. They were glad I was back. The version of me Emily had drained had been replaced with someone lighter, freer. There were moments of sadness, of course. Betrayal doesn't vanish overnight. But instead of letting it hollow me out, I used it as fuel. Every time I thought of her lies, I pushed harder at the gym. Every memory of the wine glass or the smell of cologne turned into another sketch on paper. Another piece of myself I claimed back. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving a relationship, I was building a life. One that belonged to me. One where my loyalty was given to myself before anyone else. But Emily wasn't done trying to find me. It was months later when her name crept back into my life. A message came through a mutual friend, someone I hadn't even realized still spoke to her. Emily asked me to reach out. The text read, "She says she deserves an explanation. She wants closure." I stared at those words for a long time, my stomach tightening. Not from longing, but from recognition. This was classic Emily Center herself in the story, frame herself as the one owed something. She wanted me to hand her the neat little ending she could live with. She wanted me to bleed out my pain in a way that made her feel better about what she did. But she wasn't entitled to that. Not anymore. I didn't respond. I didn't explain how many miles I'd driven that night, how many nights I'd cried into my steering wheel, how many pieces of myself I'd lost trying to be reliable for someone who saw me as disposable. She already knew what she did. My silence was the only answer she'd ever get. I blocked the friend too, severing the last thin thread between us. And in that moment, I felt something I never thought I would. Complete freedom. No guilt, no unfinished business. Just the clean, sharp edge of choosing myself. Sometimes revenge isn't shouting, exposing, or tearing someone down. Sometimes the most powerful revenge is absence. It's thriving where they can't see you, growing in places they'll never touch, and becoming untouchable to the person who once thought they owned your heart. I don't think about Emily much anymore. When I do, it's not with regrets, with clarity. She taught me exactly what kind of love I'll never accept again, and that's silence. That was my closure. That was my revenge.